Okay, so I'm Sham. I also work with the Forest Way. Aruna and Madhavan were students in the school where I used to teach. I still teach. But I think when I joined there, I was working with IT, and then I went to Marudam, and I was in their class, and I was maybe 23, 24 when I went there, 23. So 12 வருஷம் ஆயிடுச்சு. But I was always thinking, I'm learning with these guys also, man. Like வயசு ஒரு 10-12 வருஷம் அதிகமாக இருந்தால் கூட அவங்களுக்கு எப்பவுமே நிறைய தெரியும் என்னோட நிறைய விஷயம். I learn from them, and it keeps going on like that. I think it's also nice to be like talking after them like that. I find like my journey has always been like that with them, and it's very interesting that it also happens like this today. So this அவங்க கொஞ்சம் பேசும்போது நிறைய விஷயம் கஷ்டமாக இருந்தது, and also I was so fascinated by what they were saying. This might now sound like இந்த டைட்டானிக்கில் வயலின் வாசிப்பாங்கல்ல, அந்த மாதிரி கப்பலே உள்ளே போகுது, எங்கேப்பா வயலின் வாசிச்சுட்டு இருக்கேன்ற மாதிரி இருக்கும். ஆனாலும் பில்டிங் சாயும் போது தான் நாங்கள் அப்படி மெதுவாக அப்படி ஃபேன்லாம் தொடச்சி ஆணி அடிச்சுட்டு இருப்போம். அந்த மாதிரி தான் இதுன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். So I think the story, this is the black and white la pathina, that is the Arunachala, the hill where we've been working now for almost 20 years, I think. So it looks completely barren. Again, in the Arunala munile sonna mari a lot of extraction adalam taandi it is inside Thiruvannamalai. Ipo iniki Paurnami illa, so it has a ritual of like setting the whole thing on fire. So edume irukadu, manjambil irukum, so lemongrass, again Simpopogon, what Aruna said it. I think that was the only like dominant species that was found there. And now we also see that there must have been some rootstocks left over from before that we didn't know about before. It just looked barren. So how did things start? I don't know. When I look at all this, I find it very intimidating. Na pomode already there was a nursery, there was already some planting happening. Like idha paatha enna, it looks like every other hill that's around. Ellathayum vettitaanga, ellathayum eristanga. So what are we going to do here? So that is 2008. You can see it's 2003, is it? Okay. Okay, so 2003 அப்பயும் ஆட்டு அதே மாதிரி தான் இருக்கு. So the light green that you see is all lemongrass. So it might look green. I think I'll keep showing photos of the hill here and there, and it look like weight loss photographs. ஒரே மரம் தான், மலை தான் காட்டுறேன், என்னப்பா இப்படி இருக்கு, இதுல இப்படி இருக்குன்ற மாதிரி இருக்கும். ஆனா இது after the rains it will look completely different, and in summer it will look completely different. So suddenly our moods will also go with it. When it looks dry, we'll think like, ஐயோ ஒண்ணுமே ஆலப்பா, என்னப்பா இவ்வளவு நாளா வேலை பண்றோம். And suddenly the rain will come and you'll feel like, wow, like what we've done, so incredible, man. So this is the hill now, and also this is all now. So again, like weight loss photograph. So that journey is what I will talk about. Engala vandu what we could have done better, engala vandu kevalama panntom, and some things that we've learned along the way, and what we look into the future for. So I think again this story is about what we can do in our own backyard. I don't think when this work started, the forest type is tropical dry evergreen forest. I don't think anyone knew anything about that. I don't think anyone knew about what species were growing here. Hildagardia, critically endangered species la inga irukano yarukum theriyadhu, and climate change on theriyadhu, carbon footprint theriyadhu. I don't know how the initial thought process and all was. For me, I think it was just, this is right where we are. This hill is burning all the time. Can we do something about it? I think in that way, it's also very simplistic to think about it, but it's also like very powerful in some way for me. That, it's a big leap of faith to put your energy and time into something. I don't think it was foreseen to become something like this either. I don't think there was also a target to reach, but I think many things just unraveled along the way. So இது கோவந்தா கால் தான் நினைக்கிறேன். ஸோ தட்ஸ் ஒரு ஒயிட் மேனோட கால், அது பிரிட்டிஷ் கை. ஸோ அது நீங்கள் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா தெரிஞ்சிடும். அது வந்து ஃபயர் ஃபைட்டிங்னான்றதை அப்படியே காட்டுறோம். அவர் தான் அப்படியே அந்த இறங்கி பயங்கரமாக ஃபயர் ஃபைட்லாம் பண்ணுவாராம். ஸோ லாட் ஆஃப் ஃபயர் ஃபைட்டிங் இஸ் ஹவு வி ஸ்டார்டட் அவர் ஒர்க், basically trying to stop the fires, and it must have been extremely daunting. Like now there's some trees, there's some things where fire goes and stops, but before it was just lemongrass. லெமன் கிராஸ் பற்றி யோசிக்கிறேன்னா அதை வத்தி குச்சி மாதிரி அப்படியே கொளுத்தி விட்டா சர்றன்னு பரவிடும். ஸோ பிஃபோர் ஐ வெண்ட் இட் வாஸ் ஃபுல் ஆஃப் லெமன் கிராஸ். ஐ டோன்ட் நோ ஹவு தே டிட் ஃபயர் ஃபைட்டிங். அங்கே பரசுராமனுக்குலாம் தெரியும், நேற்றுக்கு பேசியிருப்பாரு, அவர்லாம் தான் முன்னாலேருந்து அதை நிறைய பண்ணியிருக்காரு. ஸோ பட் தேர் வாஸ் a lot of fire fighting and then luckily we started making fire breaks. So what is a fire break? Fire fighting பற்றி எதாவது சொல்லலாமா? எதுக்குப்பா அதுவும் ரொம்ப டிப்ரெசிங் ஆகிடும்பா. ஓகே. ஸோ this is like GPS tracks of all the fire breaks we have on a hill. Like there was no idea that something like this will come up, I'm sure. It's a lot of work. Basically what we do is there's lemongrass right through the whole hill. We just remove the lemongrass. I think we used to do 5-meter wide sections so that the fire won't jump from இப்போ இங்கே நெருப்பு இருக்குன்னா இங்கேருந்து வேறு எதுக்கும் பரவிடாமல் இந்த எட்ஜ் பவுண்டரி மாதிரி போட்டு வச்சிடுறது, லெமன் கிராஸை ரிமூவ் பண்ணி. And then we can go and firefight it within this little area. So that is the idea of fire breaks. So basically localizing fires and making it easier to firefight. So this, I think now we have about 22 kilometers again. So this is like the part facing town, temple and all. So there's more dense fire breaks because more fires actually happen on these areas. And then this is the other side of the hill. So again, this photograph was taken in June. So பாத்தீங்கன்னா கொஞ்சம் காஞ்ச மாதிரி தான் இருக்கும். 2023. So fire break, I think like over time we progressed to making more and more, covering more of the hill over time. I think this is predominantly without this there's no other work that we can do. In the planting species, nothing can work without when there's fire anyway. So Arunachala, again, like whatever Aruna said, you can just apply all that. There's a lot of logging, lot of grazing, lot of extraction, and on top of all that, Om Namah Shivaya nu solte neruppu kolthi vittu irupanga. So it is even so. What we also realized, I don't think anyone realized that this hill was worse than what was in other places. Like it's now, and for me at least, now when I go around, I thought everything is like this hill. Angandu paatha all the hills will look the same. They'll all look like ella neruppu eriyum. Paapom January masla neruppu eriyum. We'll think it's the same thing. But actually, this is I think is more degraded than everything else around because it's inside town. So there must have been more extraction and more fires and grazing therla. So நான் அதுக்குள்ளே இது போட்டேன்னா ஓகே. ஸோ ஐ திங்க் ஃப்ரம் த பிகினிங் அ லாட் ஆஃப் த ஒர்க் வாஸ் டன். ஐ மீன் there's a lot of people that get employed from villages around to do the work, but also like engaging children from the beginning, like school children taking school. This is mainly to build some public engagement, like just because the hill is inside town and any work that's done needs to be sustained by the people of the place, the community that's there. So that engagement is a continuous process that keeps going on. So Marudam is a school, forest way Marudamna ஒரே ஒரு group தான். So Marudam was started later. என்ன ஒரு சொன்னா எந்த வருஷத்துல Marudam start ஆச்சு? 2009. So there you can see these are all like Marudam kids collecting. So we try to engage kids in whatever activities that we can, building a relationship with the landscape itself and trying to re-establish your relationships in other ways. So what happens with fire? So this is again in December, and this is Arunachala, and that is பக்கத்தில் கவுத்தின்னு சொல்லிட்டு இன்னொரு ஒரு மலைகள் இருக்கும். So what we see with firefighting, like or fire breaks, is protection from fire. Is you can see the Kauti will change completely like to this after fires, and then the Arunachala also changes. But it's more green. It doesn't have, so that's the difference that we see. So even though it looks more barren, it's because of this. Like the one on the left, again to the right, is just a 2-month difference. As I said, our landscape is predominantly deciduous, so most trees will drop their leaves. So it will look like a completely different place in just 2-3 months. So this is more photos from firefighting. Basically now what we do, we just go with machetes, chop off branches and try to beat the fire out. So again, here public engagement is huge. It needs how much ever people that you can have to do firefighting. A lot of people come from town, which is always very nice to see. I mean, it's still a very small fraction of the town, but still that someone cares to come up and also do this with us is always very nice. So this is what happens to a fire damaged area. As you can see, it's all lemongrass. These are lemongrass. And then you can see that here is actually a little path. So it's very interesting to understand what can actually stop a fire. Like sometimes you have like a 10-meter wide fire break and it jumps in. So it depends on the wind. So when this fire happened, the wind was blowing like this. So if this was on a different season, the fire will jump this easily. So we also started understanding how fire works, and it was very crucial because again, it's a common degradation factor across the landscape through many places, I guess. So it's good to also understand what effects does it have. And so this is after the rains. So you see the lemongrass is the first one that comes back. The lemongrass almost seems to like fire. And the trees are still like brown and the leaves are falling off. And then you can see the older trees are the first ones to respond. But the younger ones take longer time to respond. So this is also what we found is with fire, natural regeneration. So over time, we've seen that the smaller trees get damaged way more and the bigger trees have more resource of, I don't know, whatever, maybe Madhavan can tell me why. But they seem to be able to withstand these fires much better.
Fire doesn't reach the top.
Fire doesn't, but it's just the heat that takes out all the leaves. It's good enough to just, all the leaves drop. Yeah. So again, all these are photographs from now, like already I've moved, I started with in the beginning, but this was a very slow process. This is over, I don't know, 18, 19 years of some fire protection. So the recovery is very slow. The forest is slowly coming back. And the problem is mostly, like what Aruna said, the diversity is extremely low. When it was barren, most of the species were taken out. And there's no contiguous forest itself. So all the old growth forests are much farther away. So there's no ways for, some wildlife come through, some birds come through now. So even to understand the history of a place, like where there's been fire, where there's not been fire, we had to understand like how to look at something. So usually the trees have peeling barks. And then fire the rain will come, everything will look green. So this tree is very special for us. This is Chloroxylon sweetenia because it stores at least like 10 years, I think, more than 10 years. It stores that the bark is charred. So now when we go on a hill, even though we are protecting from fire, we can still see recovery. Like where there's been fire, what is the species composition there? Fire illada edathula eppadi irukku. So this is just some indicator of how we read the landscape. So same thing, younger vegetation adhigama adi vangidum, older vegetation are better. So over time, the question is like fire break making is extremely resource intensive. Idu evlo naal pannite irpinga. Eniga or naal how much funding will this need? This looks a bit unsustainable, right? So I don't know if this was even thought about before when we were doing it, but over time what we saw is that the vegetation is coming up. So in the second photograph, you see there's a dense vegetation. So as the vegetation comes up, the lemongrass gets shaded out. So lemongrass, it needs full sun. Adirnada nerup paravudhu maina. So vara the lemongrass starts getting shaded out, and then what we see is the trees also start growing bigger and bigger. So the fire kind of hits that clump of trees and then it stops. So this is the hope that we have now, and we also keep seeing it in fires these days that firefighting is becoming much easier because some of the work is done by the coming up vegetation itself. So we can almost imagine it like being natural fire breaks to some extent. But over time, there'll be enough vegetation that it will stop the fire. Even if fire happens, it will localize the fire and it will stop it by itself, which is happening already, but we still need to do firefighting. So, okay, so we started protecting the hill from fire. So this is Arunachala. This is the Javad range, and this is Senji forest, what Aruna spoke about. Again, the Senji forest has many species that are not found anywhere else around, and it's like a little island that we have. And it's protected by, it's like a humpy kind of landscape. Humpy Deriona is like full of boulders, so it's very difficult to take out timber from there. So அதனால தான் அது பொழைச்சிட்டு இருக்கு இவ்வளோ நாள் அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறேன், கண்டிப்பாக தான் நினைக்கிறேன். ஸோ So when we started protecting the hill, we also realized that the diversity is extremely low. And we didn't have an idea of what could be here in this place that we are protecting from fires. So going to the Senji forest and Javadu forest, we started seeing that what kind of a forest could be present in this place. So then, this is in the leftmost photograph is Parsuramana there. Again, if you remember from yesterday. So this is our seed collection trips. So then we started collecting seeds in these forests. So again, we had no idea of how to germinate them, the Javadu also has tropical moist evergreen forest. So we had no idea about what should grow in our place, what will grow. So we actually had to try it out to see what actually fits within in the Arunachala itself. Because the Javadu is also like lower temperatures and much higher than us. Not much, but it's good enough difference. So seed collection, okay. Huh? So there's a lot. I think we collect at least like 180, 190 species of whatever different trees and bushes is mostly what we focus on. So again, they all have very different germination techniques. And then there are other people in botanical gardens in Oroville, like they've been working with the same species for a while. So many times we have to share information, we have to try out different techniques. Again, Parsuramana is the master there with seed germination. So sometimes we have to boil it in hot water. Sometimes things are just போடுவோம் ஒன்றுமே வரலன்னு சொல்லிட்டு தூக்கி போட்டுருவோம் ரொம்ப நாளுக்கு அப்புறம் பாப்பா இது பார்த்து முளைஞ்சு வந்துருக்குப்பா அப்படின்வாங்க. Then we realize that some need like 8-9 months of dormancy. And then some we need to put them straight away into the bags. இல்லைனா அது நம்ம ஒரு 10 நாள் வச்சிருந்தாலே அதுக்கப்புறம் முளைக்காது. So many times it's just trial and error. சும்மா ட்ரை பண்ணி பார்க்கறது. And then we also slowly over time started documenting about germination, about plant care. So there are some plants that need to go into mother beds. So you can see the first two photographs. And then in trays. இதெல்லாம் பற்றி அருணா செம்மையாக பேசிட்டான். So the idea of the nursery is basically it's like kindergarten or something, right? Like we are taking the seeds. Every seed is very different. We're trying to see how we can help them germinate and also bring them up to pace, like to a point where in the end we're going to plant them in a very, let's say, very hostile environment for them, because it's not forest that we're planting them into. These are species that are supposed to be kaatla valara vendiyadhu, like we're just throwing it on the Arunachala edho valandurudhu, and many times we get excited. We want to plant like idella mokka ajayadara kevalama pannuvom, like we'll try every species, and then like there might be some deep forest species there. Some will need stream ecosystem, some will need rocks. Like we see some in the old growth forest, but we will also have to try to see what actually works. Because there are some trees like what Aruna says, there'll be only one tree. If that's growing by a rock, it doesn't mean that species only grows by a rock. You have to actually see what it likes, how much shade it likes. So the nursery is like, kindergarten, and then sometimes they get sick, ashlam we have to put on it, like they'll get diseases. Again, they're not used to these kind of like domestic conditions, no? It's like they're so close to each other, and then we try to document. Idella vandu just to also for sharing with other people, I think it's more useful. This is, you see one seed becoming a seedling here, the process. So then is again very, very inefficient is carrying the plants up on the hill, which is not, you can only carry so much. So again, I think this is a very, as I said, inefficient. It's good fun till some point, and it's like very hard. So one nice thing that it makes it is that we have to be very mindful of what we do. Summa ஏனோ தானன்னு போய் நட முடியாது. அப்படியே நட்டுருக்கோம், நட்டு அடி வாங்கினதுலேருந்து இது சொல்கிறது. ஸோ that because it takes so much effort to plant, we have to be very mindful of where we plant, because there's too much resource being wasted.
Hey, moral support within this.
Moral support, yaar number soplaanglamma. Oh, so this is idana Nirmal edha paakala. This is Nirmal, by the way. He's sitting there with and then this is Kulakabali and Soplang. This is my name. I don't know what they call, but and Kannan Aditi, okay. And then, yeah, we also torture our school kids to carry more plants with us. This is more child labor, as you can see. But that is myself also. I go there so that in case I get caught, I have my moral high ground.
And that's
So,
the upcycle thing.
upcycle thing, more like we to feel great about ourselves. This is old pesticide can, so great. So I think I think it's good for us that it takes a lot to carry the plants up. As I said, we cannot be mindless about it because it's still a lot of resources. So we cannot just plant out like 50,000 plants and like hope good things happen. We have in the past been a bit mindless about it and have learned over time that things are not just going to work. If we get more methodical, it does help that things survive better and the effort is worth it. So again, moral support. Idena Aditi, and then pitting and okay. So as Madhavan said, like higher elevation have something special. Like usually the higher elevations when we plant, there's much a higher survival rate. In our hill, I think it's obviously cooler. So the hill profile goes from 200 meters from sea level to about 800 meters from sea level. So 600 meters, so it is cooler higher up. And also in, I think February, March, we have this, cloud cover. There will be a lot of dew fall higher up. So it will be much better and the lower areas are fully dry. So even this might be contributing to better survival higher up. So it's a lot of work to carry plants higher up, but but that's what works, seems to work for many plants. So when I say all this, even though we have like 180 species, there's at least like 30% that we don't even manage to grow in any meaningful numbers. We get a lot of seeds and some don't seed, some don't germinate, so it's not like all successful. Like there's a lot of difficulty in just germinating and propagation. And on top of that, there are some that we plant and we know that where our hill is not in the place where they can host these. It might take like many more, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, who knows, before there's enough canopy, there's enough soil, there's enough moisture to host these kind of deeper forest species. Okay, so great. So as the hill got more and more vegetation, more and more wildlife started populating. And then like when we saw deer, we were like, oh deer, sama bangaram. And then I think very soon we were like, ayo deer, na ibbi bande. So this is like tree guards around the plants that you see. There's no leopards. We don't have any leopards. The Senji Hills have leopards and all, but we don't have any predators for the deer, so the deer population is just... So these are like some unforeseen things, no? You think something is great and then like, okay, maybe it's not too great. Maybe it's still good. Who knows? The forest department like deer. So then we also started seeing that a lot of our planting started like, when we go back to seeing, there'll be like nothing left. Sometimes there's no evidence of more species. Actually. Then we realized like more than like 70% of our species are actually prone to grazing. And this is again somewhere that we completely messed up. I think we were planting and there was decent survival and then we kept planting hoping that this will be the same. But then the landscape keeps changing, no? We are protecting it from fires, it's constantly changing. There's better canopy, there's better wildlife coming in, so they're having their own role to play now. So I think for a good span of time, we were planting and at least like 90%, 95% of the species plants were just getting eaten up. So we have a lot of plants like martyrs, like they still keep getting eaten up. So from that, we've also so we have to keep adapting. Like this is like kind of cool to see that we've done something, oh, it looks so beautiful now, but we have to keep adapting because things are changing constantly and this is something that we have to be very mindful of, that it's never fully sorted out. So again, the hill is huge, 700 hectares. So we cannot plant through the whole thing. And as we can see, just with fire protection, most of the landscape will be covered by probably like within 10 species of only that much diversity. So our role really is in protecting, but also bringing in diversity. But you can't plant through the whole hill. So the yellow marks are where we planted last year. So we try to find different habitats, like stream, rocks, like different species, like different things. And also some species like more shaded spots, some species need sun, some like a bit more rocky. So we have to find suitable locations for different plants and then plant them. So again, this is very like at the starting stages. No, we know to some extent where they're found in the forest, what seems to survive with planting, but it's all very preliminary. I think and this is just one hill. Like it's also like the sample size is so small. So the knowledge about these things are very basic still. So here you can see even a fire line actually. So this is a fire line that you can see. It's just removed. I don't know if you can see from there. Okay, so this is Arunachala vegetation diversity. I think what is interesting here is, okay, so the total tree species that we have now. So this is not all saplings and all. I'm just counting seed trees that are at least like 5-6 years old. Like many times we are planting saplings, but they don't make it even for 2-3 years because again, they need the ecology of the place to be even better. It will take a long time before our hill gets to that health. So we have about 101 and of that like 47 have been introduced. This is very exciting for us. I think this number keeps going up as the hill keeps getting healthier. Of what will survive. We'll keep planting the same thing and torturing them. But who can survive, that number keeps going up. And this is again our hope is that the plants that we plant, they're not to cover up the hill with diversity. It's like a seed bank. So you plant some and you hope that they'll grow up and they'll seed. And then that they'll spread on their own because it's too inefficient again it's not possible to just plant everywhere. So this is interesting. There's like 19 of those introduced species are now seeding. And that gives hope for the future work to follow that same direction also. And even in like this Kauti where I showed this other hillscape nearby where we're going to begin our work, we're kind of using this model as like reassurance that okay, we can just do planting in little numbers and invest more in protection. Because planting is very fancy. I mean, I also get very attracted to planting. It's like, it feels great that you're just putting a plant and it's going to grow up. But actually a lot of work needs to go into protection. And this is what we've planted and it's regenerating on its own. So we've seen saplings of the same. So I think being so methodical and all has also been very recent for us. Like, it's not like we've been doing this all along, which is also very important, I think, to remember. That we didn't really set out like so methodical, like this is not even so methodical actually. But even all this, I don't think we had so much of an idea on numbers and like what's working and what's not. I think the spirit of the whole place was, when I went at least, was we're just going to get our hands dirty, we're going to try our best, we're going to try to build a relationship with this place and see where it goes. Not going to be perfect, but we're going to try what we can and try to connect with people that we can and do what we can. So now I think as time goes, we're getting a bit more methodical because we're having more and more knowledge with our relationship with the land and also connecting to more people who can feed us with more information. So bushes are the same. I think bushes again in the Arunachala வந்து நான் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் போகும்போது முற்புதர் காடுன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. So I don't think in my mind I don't think it's a thorn and scrub forest. முற்புதர் நிலைன்னு வேணா சொல்லலாம். It's a state. So I think from being a grassland, like இப்போ குழந்தை எப்படி மெதுவாக வளர்ந்து வருது, அப்படி பிரைமரி ஸ்கூல் போகுது, அதுக்கப்புறமா ஏதோ போகுது, யூனிவர்சிட்டி போகுது, அப்புறமா என்ன கல்யாணம் பண்ணிக்குமா, ஓகே அதெல்லாம் பண்ணிக்கும். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி ஸ்ட்ரெயிட்டாக அப்படியே போய் மரங்கள் அந்த மாதிரிலாம் பண்ண முடியாது. அதுவே இந்த லேண்ட்ஸ்கேப் நம்ம விடும்போது how it grows is from a grassland, it grows into a thorny bush scrub. அதுக்கப்புறம் அதுலேருந்து ஒரு 2-3 மரம் வருது. So this is what we see. And then mostly those are going to be deciduous. And then there are going to be other tree species that are going to come that need some shade, need better soils. And these bushes and this thorny scrub are going to help build that soil up. So again, we cannot impose our will thinking, okay, I want to have Hildegardia populifolia, which might grow actually like sun. But அதுக்கு critically endangered பா, அது எடுத்துட்டு போய் அங்கே நட்டுருங்கப்பா அப்படின்னா அதெல்லாம் ஒர்க் அவுட் ஆகாது. So even that bushes, again here you see there was already a higher number of bushes even when we went in because it was a degraded landscape and bushes were anyway like ஒரு kindergarten வச்சுக்கலாம். மரங்கள்லாம் இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் மேலே வர தான் நிறைய ஸ்பீசிஸ் வர ஆரம்பிக்கும் வளர அதாவது ஹெல்த் அதிகமாக. So I think this understanding of the landscape will keep changing for us. Like even when we go within old growth forests, in areas where there's settlement, it looks like Murupudar Kaadu. On one side, there'll be like tall trees, fully shaded, a lot of mosquitoes, fully dark, and then you'll get into a place where there's a lot of cutting and there'll be a lot of thorny trees, thorny scrub. And I don't think that that's our forest type per se. Okay. It looks very complicated, and maybe it's close to lunch. I'll just skip that part. Okay. So this is the Kauti hill that's close to us. Again, this no Om Namah Shivaya la inga kadayadu. Only yearly one fire. Summana kolthi oradhu kadayadu. And the logging has been reduced in the last 10 years with forest department doing their work. And this is how this hill looks, which is not very different from the way our hill looks. So when we went here, I was like, what is the difference? Like from distance, it looks like the same. And what have we been doing here for 20 years? So then going in, we realized that the diversity again is very less. It's predominantly fire-tolerant species that survive here. But even here, cannot state it enough that the ability of the landscape to come back to life on its own is very powerful. Like here you can see this is all light green. All this light green is predominantly within 10 species. And this dark green are places where the fire doesn't enter anymore. So the landscape itself is increasing its fire resistance because it's not being cut out. And even though there's yearly fires, it's still fighting back. So there'll be much higher diversity of trees within this place and bushes than here, because this place doesn't get fire, but still it's quite low. So that's where the introduction of species comes in. So this is to compare Arunachala and Kauti, which is very unfair because we worked on Arunachala. Kauti hasn't had that level of cuddling and whatever. So what is interesting is here fire-tolerant species is almost the same, but non-fire-tolerant is much more. So that just, even yearly fires do have an impact on species. Like Kauti has one fire every year, but even that seems to have a big impact on how much species survive. So these are two fires that happened this year. I mean, I don't know if I must get into this, but basically just to say that, there are some vegetation coming up. This is like in peak summer, this satellite imagery. So before we would have had to fight the fire, this is rocks, we'd have had to fight the fire all around here. But now there's more vegetation coming along the streams, and we didn't have to fight this whole side. And even here, even though it looks like this, there's very little. I think we probably had to fight about 25% of this edge. Like before, we had to fight the whole fire. This is just to say that the landscape itself is responding with the protection. And hopefully over time, we don't have to make fire breaks or do firefighting, which will be nice. Okay, this is again improved fire resistance going on. So with over time, there's also a lot of wildlife coming back. I have no idea about all this wildlife. Kumar Anna ortha pesvaru avar nariya solvaru idha patti. And all these people, Arunana, all these people are like crazy. They put stuff in eBird, INAT and all. So there'll be some names here which I won't even know. But all I know is that the number of butterflies have at least gone up 3-4 times. And every now and then everyone will be jumping about some butterfly or some bird that's come, and I'll also get happy. And birds also keep coming in, and so that is very nice that that it's becoming more and more dynamic. It's very nice that the diversity is going up, and that we keep recording it also. We have a lot of enthusiasts. So this is some new birds and butterflies. This is recently. Okay, so whenever we can, we try to include, you see this, this is Tribhuvan who's sitting there with glasses. No, so we try to include children also, as much as we can with our work, because we really think whenever the work stops, for it to sustain, the people around it have to be connected to the place. How to reconnect it, the landscape to the people in a different way. And also use this as an opportunity with children also. Like I include myself in that because like it doesn't have to be children alone. It can be anyone basically. Now Chennai, so for me also to have that experience of going on the hill, planting, I didn't know anything, but that kind of puts some connection and establish some relationship with, I think, other than the buildings. Okay, so working with the forest, of course, you cannot just work with the forest, you have to work with the people, as I said before. So the first 3 photographs are like a park that was made, it's a children's park that's made at the base of the hill. And here we also, with these kids, sometimes we hold some awareness programs. And then when we organize like nature education programs for students also, we host them. So again, we have to keep engaging with the people of the place. And that's basically it. I think that's about it. Perumal? Huh?
The lovers meeting place.
This is after planting, we're just sitting down and looking out, that's it.
I thought you're creating romantic places.
I am creating romantic for Nirmal, there's a connection, but we don't get into that now. But this was just to pull his leg. But I think there's many, like in terms of town, like we're seeing town and there's a water body there. I think what is interesting is, munalla mara varumbodhu stream will just, even when I used to be there first time, stream அப்படியே அடிச்சிட்டு போகும். அப்படியே ப்ரௌனா ஓடும். I think over time, definitely the stream is running for much longer time. This is a huge deal. It's running for longer, which also means that there's better groundwater recharge at the base. So இது ஏதோ சொல்லுவாங்க, I don't know anything about நம்மாடு வரலாம், ஆனால் இந்த மாதிரிலாம் வந்து மலையிலேருந்து தான் அப்படியே தண்ணி அதெல்லாம் டிபெண்ட்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. But this is really what we see here. It's obviously the tanks and lakes that were down are definitely full for longer because the water is running out for much longer than before. Which is very nice also because there's actually water available for all kinds of beings that are coming to inhabit the hill now. So that, and also obviously the soil erosion has gone down. So aduvum is very interesting. That andmari apdiye brown color ah ipla varadilla. So all that must mean good things, I think, but we don't know. Looking at the model gate ellam paakumbodhu I just think what does it mean to have this little island, but it's a good island to be in for now. And then play the violin. So that's it, I think. Okay. நீங்க குமார் நான் கூப்பிடுறீங்க?